Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about all of the teachable moments from Inside Out 2. I just saw Inside Out 2 over the weekend, and of course, I loved it. And I wanted to make a video just talking about how to use Inside Out 2 as a resource, whether you are a therapist, a parent, a teacher, or just someone who is interested in having conversations about mental health. I personally am a clinical mental health therapist, and I have already talked to multiple clients about Inside Out 2, and I do not work with kids, I work with young adults. I think it is super applicable across the age ranges because there is like a very shallow level to like, here are the emotions, here's anger, here's like the basics about these emotions that you could talk to a kid about. And then there's some really high level emotional intelligence type of conversations that you could also pull out from Inside Out 2. So I'm going to be highlighting some of those for you today from a therapist perspective. If that sounds like something you would enjoy, please keep watching. Hi, my name is Alyssa Powers, and I created this YouTube channel to teach you the things that grad school didn't so you can thrive as a mental health practitioner. If you enjoy mental health and therapist content, I would love it so much if you would subscribe and stick around. Now, getting right into Inside Out 2, and one of my favorite teachable moments is, of course, we see, and I guess I should just say spoilers. Obviously, I'm going to be talking about details from the movie. So if you have not watched it yet, maybe it's time to save this video for later. But my absolute favorite thing and takeaway from Inside Out 2 is the integration of the self when we're looking at all of the emotions. So when Riley hits puberty and adopts more complex emotions like anxiety, envy, ennui, and embarrassment, she starts to integrate her full self. So you see at the beginning that like Joy is trying to coddle her and basically make it where, you know, she's picking and choosing what she remembers and she's trying to protect her from anything negative and bad. But a true integrated self is being able to take the positive and the negatives about yourself and your own attributes and kind of integrate them together, because we can't have joy all the time and be a normal human being. And we also can't have anxiety all the time and be a normal human, right? We need to have a range of emotions, and that's actually quite healthy. That's normal. So I love the idea of making a little worksheet where you have the different lines of the different colors and you write down like a core thought that you have about yourself. So in the movie, Riley said, "I'm not good enough." That was one of her core thoughts that kept coming up. And so that was related to her anxiety. So maybe that would be an orange line. And then you would have at the top that little sense of self icon. And that could be whatever. If you're working with kids, that could be something that they could be creative with and come up with. But I think that that would be such a cool little activity for adults and kids, because we all have common stories that keep popping up and things that, you know, we believe about ourselves that we think about over and over again. So I love that idea. And I love that you see at the end of the movie all the emotions hugging each other and saying like, "Oh, I love our girl." Like anxiety says, "I was just trying to keep her safe." So you kind of see that even these so-called negative emotions have a place. And I think that's such a wonderful thing for clients to realize, because of course, in a perfect world, like we never want to experience anger. We never want to experience embarrassment or anxiety, but it is what makes us human. And I like to talk to clients about like, if you were this perfect person that you're idealizing in your mind, no one would like you. you would have no friends, you would be so unrelatable. Like, this is not how we connect as humans. We connect with characters in shows and movies and books that are imperfect, because this is the essence of being human. So without getting too existential, I just love that picture of all of the emotions hugging and like working together, and not just joy, but like everybody. So that would be my first teachable moment, would be the integration of the self. The next thing that I think would be wonderful to talk about with clients or kids is when you see anxiety have that anxiety attack where she freezes. So in the movie, when Riley gets into trouble during her hockey practice, she goes into the penalty box, and she has a anxiety attack. Now, I like how it was depicted, and in my opinion, it was showing like a freeze response. And I think that can be quite true for a lot of people. They just have mounting anxiety throughout the day, or like over a certain topic, and then all of a sudden they just go into like fight or flight response or freeze, and their heart rate is really, really elevated. They can't breathe, they feel the tightness. And that was like a hard moment, I think, to watch, but it was really well depicted, because you saw anxiety like had good intentions. Anxiety was trying to control everything, trying to keep everything going in the way that she thought was best, but it backfired and it made her glitch and freak out. And so I personally think that is a depiction of an anxiety attack versus a panic attack, because a panic attack comes typically out of nowhere. It's just like a response out of nowhere. It's usually not linked to anything super specific. People who have panic disorder will experience panic attacks, but more commonly people will experience anxiety attacks. They just don't know the difference, and I think panic attacks are more commonly talked about. But an anxiety attack will be mounting throughout the day. So you saw like Riley had a stressful day. She was trying really hard to fit in. She really was putting a ton of pressure on herself. So she was getting more and more anxious, and you see anxiety behind the scenes pressing all the buttons, you know, at the motherboard of Riley's mind, and going faster and faster until she just froze. I think that would be really great to be able to talk to clients about, especially clients who are prone to anxiety attacks, that like your anxiety is working so hard to try and keep you safe, and it's just backfiring. And the way to get out of that is also depicted in the movie, where you see Riley grounding herself. I loved that part where you see Riley like taking in her surroundings, taking some deep breaths. I know at the end when she skates and they say like, Joy, Riley wants you, and you see like Joy's she's emanating joy basically, like it's little pieces of her going to that motherboard in Riley's mind. You see all of the grounding that Riley does to really enjoy that moment. So that brings me to the third thing that I think would be a great talking point to pull out of Inside Out 2, which is grounding and being present is such a great way to combat our anxiety and our unwanted thoughts and our ruminations. So you finally see like Riley the whole time had been skating with a ton of anxiety. And then she finally skates with joy, and what it looks like is like she is taking in her five senses. She's feeling the ice on her skates. She's breathing deeply. She's looking around. She's not flustered, but she's in touch with like all of those senses, and she has joy and she enjoys what she's doing so much more. So I absolutely love that. And I do work from kind of a mindfulness framework in my own practice, so that grounding as a coping skill and deep breathing is pretty much like a holy grail kind of thing that I talk about with clients. So I think that is a really great depiction of how to ground yourself in the present moment. Next, I think that a great thing that could be talked about is how it's not healthy to bottle up our emotions. So you see that I think anxiety puts the old emotions or like the original emotions into a glass bottle and puts them in a safe to try and contain them. And of course, the rest of the movie is them getting out and trying to help Riley. But I liked that depiction of them being bottled up, repressed emotions, because we often try to do that ourselves. I don't think many of us are trying to repress our joy, but I think plenty of us are trying to repress our sadness, repress our anger, and you just see how all it did was draw things out and make everything take longer. And really, our emotions, no emotion is bad. And also, we can't over-identify with one emotion. I think I see a ton of clients who feel like they are their anxiety because it's so incredibly prevalent, but really when you learn how to cope and you do all the things you can within your power to become less anxious, you realize that you really are a more integrated self. You might have anxiety as a part of you, but you also might have a lot of other emotions that are really prevalent for you. And also, when you lessen your anxiety, sometimes other mental health issues can come to the forefront because anxiety was taking such a huge role. You could see that in Riley's mind, like it was the biggest emotion, calling all of the shots. But sometimes clients will really work through their anxiety or get on medication and then they're like, oh my gosh, wait, like actually I'm also depressed. I just didn't realize it. So I think it's good to realize like you are not your emotions. Feelings are not facts. We all have a range of emotions and some are going to be more prevalent, but they are all important and we have each one for a reason. Now, I just wanted to touch on the fact that Riley's anxiety says somewhere towards the end of the movie, I just wanted to keep her safe. And I love that line so much. It might be one of my favorites in the entire movie because our anxiety is actually a biological response to danger. And I like to talk to clients about evolutionary psychology, where like in cave people times, hunter-gatherer times, if there was a threat, you needed your fight or flight response. You needed your anxiety. And the people who had higher levels of anxiety in those times are the ones that survived those threats and then procreated to make more and more anxious descendants. So now we're, in the modern age and our biggest concerns aren't looking for food, finding shelter, fire, water. We are, so blessed to live in our modern age, but we still have this sense of anxiety that is misplaced oftentimes. So I think it's a beautiful reframe, not to be like toxic positivity vibes or anything like that, but just to say like your anxiety actually has a really important role. Like you have anxiety and it stops you from doing things that could be potentially dangerous. Like I don't cross the street in the middle of a busy intersection because my anxiety tells me I'm gonna get hit by a car and that's gonna be really, really bad, right? So there are appropriate anxiety responses, but a lot of times we are acting out of an inappropriate response where we're catastrophizing or mind reading or having black and white thinking. So just to say that that can be a nice positive spin on anxiety because so many of us have it and it can be truly debilitating, but there are reasons for it. Okay, I think this will be the last thing because I could seriously probably have like a video that's an hour long talking about all of these points, but I just want to highlight some of the main ones. So the last thing that I think you could pull out of Inside Out 2 that would be such a lovely conversation is how Riley felt really out of sorts and misaligned when she wasn't acting within her own values. So you saw that one of her major core beliefs about herself is that she's a good friend, but then throughout the movie, she acts in ways that don't align with that value and that core belief that she is a good friend. So I think that this would be so wonderful to pair with a values card sort. I don't know if therapists are really familiar with this or teachers, but I can link it down below. It's a free resource. It's just a bunch of values on cards, and you have your client sort them into like their highest top 10 values, and then some like middle of the line values, and then less important values. But really just getting to know their top 10 can be extremely enlightening, and then making sure that we are acting in ways that align with those values. So one of my values, core values, is open-mindedness. Kind of makes sense. I'm a therapist. I try to have an open mind about things. But, you know, I'm human. In my personal life, if I find myself being really judgmental, that doesn't line up with a value or core belief that I have, that I am an open person. And so that doesn't feel good to me. And any value that you have, you could see how like that would translate. And I think doing a values card sort and then talking about Inside Out 2 and Riley's values, I mean, really tons of movies kind of show this, and shows where people are acting outside of their own values. You see a main character that knows what they're doing maybe isn't right, or they have that intuitive feeling that they don't want to do something, and then you kind of see them go through their journey. But we are human, we are not robots, and we all make mistakes, and none of us can live 100% within our values unless you are like Mother Teresa or something. So I hope that you found this video helpful. I would love to hear below what your thoughts were on the movie. I think I actually liked Inside Out 2 better than the first one, even though it's been a while since I've seen the first one, so maybe that's just like a little bit biased. But I want to know as well, maybe this is a big spoiler, but I didn't stay for the ending credits. I'm sure I could just Google this, but I guess that the deep dark secret that's locked away in the safe is revealed, and I really want to know what it was. So if any of you stayed for that ending scene, like post-credit scene, you should comment below and tell me what the secret was, because I'm very curious. Again, if you found this video helpful, please subscribe. I love making content that is catered to therapists. You are my people, and I'm so glad to have you here. I will see you in the next one.